and following through on what they say. But I want you to know that I'm here for you. And I'm not going nowhere. Come here. Lay your head down on my shoulder. Yeah. Promise you don't have to shed another painful tear, because I'm your man, 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 and I ain't going nowhere. We gon' make it through this thing called life. I'm your man, 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 and we gon' ride, we gon' ride. Still remember the day I looked into your eyes. You caught me by surprise. That walk, that talk, the way you made me gravitate towards you, it changed me for the better. You're all I need, and you're all I see, and you're fine as wine. I'm so blessed you're mine. You stole my heart right from the start. When you said hello, I saw your glow. Hey, I'm your man, 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 and I ain't going nowhere. We gon' make it through this thing called life. I'm your man, 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 and we gon' ride, we gon' ride. Hey, if you ever been in love, put your hands up. If you tired of the lies, put your hands up. Wave them high up to the sky. If you ever been in love, put your hands up. If you tired of the lies, put your hands up. Wave them high up to the sky. I'm your man, yeah, I'm your man, I'm your man, and I ain't going nowhere. We gon' make it through this thing called life. I'm your man, 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 and we gon' ride, we gon' ride. I'm your man, 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 and I ain't going nowhere. We gon' make it through this thing called life. I'm your man, 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 and we gon' ride, we gon' ride. Lay your head down on my shoulder. Yeah, yeah.
What up, what up, what up, what up, what up, y'all? How y'all doing? Man, it's been a minute since I've been on here. Your boy, crazy busy,
Baby,
handling business. Let me turn this.
I know you're not used to man
Hey,
keeping their word and following through on what they say. But I want you to know that I'm here for you.
there we go. All right, y'all. So what's going on, man? How y'all doing? How y'all doing out there? Man, welcome back. I decided to, after getting so many phone calls and messages and people like Atmos, where you at? Where you at? This DIDDY stuff going on. We need you to get back into those transcripts and stuff like that, y'all. I tell you what, I've been thinking about it. I thought about tonight. I said, you know what? Let me go live. Let me test the temperature and see. I tell you what, even when I sit back sometimes, I still listen to some of the older transcripts reading we did with the R. Kelly stuff. And I'm gonna tell y'all, I can't find another channel that did it as well as we did and brought the transcripts to life where people actually felt like they were actually in the courtroom, you know? And so I gotta be honest, I've been working my back channels to see about us getting back into reading the transcripts for this trial right here. I see some people already got them and starting to read them. But you know, what I learned, and I learned this, was a very valuable lesson. Sometimes you don't need to be the first one to jump on something. Sometimes you can be one of the last ones to jump on it. And people support you, they're going to support you no matter what. You see a lot of some of the bigger bloggers, and you see like, you have some that jump out there, you have some that just come on like shit a week later, and they get just as many views. So sometimes it's just about if people like what you do and they find what you do to be quality, they're gonna come and check you out anyway. All right. So whoever's out there, hello, welcome back. Don't be afraid to say hi in the chat. Let me know you're there. If not, that's cool. You can stay in the background and just relax and listen. But y'all, what I wanted to do is I thought it would be clever to actually do a recap, because I think it's important for those of us who are working all the time, and really don't have time to sit there and listen to a whole bunch of different channels talk about stuff in the news, talk about stuff for each and every day. I think it's a great idea to do a recap on exactly what happened day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and day 6. And that's what I'm going to do tonight. So some of us who aren't as caught up on the case can get caught up, find out what's been going on in the courtroom. You got a lot of people that have said they were in the courtroom to have mixed messages, right? But sometimes it's good to just listen to some of the more higher upper echelon reporting stations. And so that's what we're going to do on this night. Okay. So I'm going to start from day 1. And we're going to just watch some of the recaps on what happened. And then we're going to talk about each day. Okay. So feel free to participate in the chat. All right. So let's get this thing started. I'm going to start with day 1. What's up? What's up, Miss Jersey D? How you doing? Thanks for coming in. I appreciate you. Thank you. All right, y'all. So let's get this going. Let me share my screen. Let's go here. Okay, here we go. So this is day 1, y'all. Let's go.
To the nation. Sean Diddy Combs, once one of entertainment's most powerful moguls, accused of crimes so heinous, he faces the possibility of spending the rest of his life behind bars. He's denied all charges. And just a warning, this story contains accounts, descriptions, and visual content of actual or alleged events that some may find disturbing.
Mom, how are you feeling today, Mom? How is your son?
Can't talk about the case at all.
All eyes are on this New York City courthouse as the federal trial for disgraced mogul Sean Diddy Combs begins.
Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs goes on trial today.
Combs is inside the courtroom along with those prospective jurors.
He faces multiple charges, including racketeering and sex trafficking.
The musician famous for hits like Bad Boy for Life.
Survive what I've been through. Y'all got drama, the saga continues.
And Can't Nobody Hold Me Down.
I tell y'all something I find interesting already. I see that it looks like Brian Steele is representing P. Diddy, or one of the lawyers. And as y'all know, Brian Steele was one of the big lawyers for the YSL trial. And I believe if Young Thug wouldn't have took a plea deal, he would have got him off. So shout out to Brian Steele for still doing his thing and getting his name out there to where he representing some of the top people. Brian Steele also is one of the lawyers that's representing Dominique Williams. So it's pretty, he's a really, really great lawyer. Okay, let's continue.
Not to lose our heads.
Charged with sex trafficking, transportation for prostitution, and racketeering conspiracy, the 55-year-old
Well,
was pleaded not guilty to all charges.
What up?
Today was a monumental day when we're talking about Sean Combs, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy. At one point, he also had the actual key to New York City. So to see him today facing trial on federal criminal charges is completely a downfall of who Puff Daddy, who Sean Combs was.
Prosecutors allege he used his power to force women into prolonged drug-fueled orgies he called freak-offs, and then threatened them into silence.
The freak-offs, according to prosecutors, were these sex marathons. Some of them lasted days, and they were fueled by ecstasy or other party drugs. And women were not allowed to leave.
And y'all, I'm going to tell y'all something. And now I know that we had earlier in the year read about these freak-offs and stuff like that. And some things that I had heard along the way was some of these things would go on all day long. Different men coming in from out of town, paid for by Diddy, to have sex. And some of the girls would be doing this for days and days and days. Can you imagine days at a time having your body pounded on and pulled on and stroke? It had to be a freaking nightmare. I mean, we're gonna learn more as it goes on, but they had to take drugs just to stay up and numb themselves and numb their minds from what was actually going on. This is very interesting. Crazy. Here we go.
Highly anticipated at the trial, the testimony of Cassandra Ventura, the singer better known as Cassie,
Man,
is at
what
the
up?
center of this now infamous
Hey,
video.
Ed Service, how you
The
doing?
disturbing scene appears to show Combs chasing her down a hotel hallway in 2016, knocking her down and kicking her. The first evidence shown to jurors today, videos and photos from that violent encounter.
Everyone was leaning in and focusing and watching this video. Literally, you can hear a pin drop in that courtroom.
A security guard who came onto the scene in the aftermath of that attack testified that Diddy had a devilish stare and Cassie had a purple eye. Another witness
Indeed,
alleging
what
he
up?
was paid to have sex with Cassie while Diddy watched and told to urinate on Cassie.
You heard so much about sex during the prosecution's opening, the defense opening. You heard about oral sex. You heard about missionary style. You heard about baby oil being put on people's body. You heard so much. This is not a case for the prude.
Cassie and Diddy were in a romantic relationship for almost a decade, releasing hits like Me and You.
They know you're the one I wanna give it to. I can see you on me too. Now it's me and you.
Her graphic and disturbing 2023 civil lawsuit against Diddy changed everything, helping spur.
Y'all, please forgive me. I did not know Cassie sung that song. I didn't know that. It's my first time. Wow. Okay. Wow. Let's go.
The federal criminal investigation into the mogul. Diddy has denied these allegations and settled that
Hot Girl
suit
Beauty,
without
what up?
admission of
How you
wrongdoing.
doing? Lessons.
Diddy's mother and children arriving to court this morning to support him, along with Combs' spokesperson.
Obviously, this is like a horrific time for the family, so they're just trying to hold steady in their faith and make sure that they take care of each other.
And how is Mr. Combs feeling?
Upbeat. I think, obviously this is a huge deal, and so he's just ready to have his side told in open court.
Inside the courtroom today, Diddy smiling and blowing kisses to his family.
I agree.
He's very observant as to what's going on in the courtroom, and he's taken part in his defense.
Both sides delivered their opening statements, making their case. The all-female prosecution team saying that Combs used a trusted inner circle to commit crime after crime, including kidnapping, arson, and sex crimes. Prosecutor Emily Johnson saying, "This is Sean Combs. To the public, he was Puff Daddy, or Diddy, a cultural icon, a businessman larger than life. But there was another side to him, a side that ran a criminal enterprise."
The prosecution is alleging that it was his inner circle that enabled him to be able to engage in these acts, but also hide these acts from the public and for it to go on for so long.
At least 3 alleged victims of Diddy are expected to testify, including Cassie, and a woman prosecutors are referring to as Jane. During opening arguments, prosecutors alleged that Diddy forced the women to participate in so-called freak-offs and instructed Cassie and Jane how to look, to dress in lingerie, wear tall platform high heels, and have manicured white nails. Diddy's defense arguing the sexual relationships were consensual and not coerced, saying the rapper lived a swingers lifestyle.
The defense wants to say that these women are all adults. They're all consenting and willing participants in these freak-offs.
Defense attorney Tenny Garrigo saying in her opening statement, that may not be what you like to do in your bedroom, but you're not here to judge him for his sexual preferences. She later added, being a willing participant in your own sex life is not sex trafficking. That disturbing video was also part of the defense's opening arguments, plainly saying it was an instance of domestic violence. Garrigo saying, domestic violence is...
All right. So, obviously, I think all of us, if y'all wonder what I'm chewing on, I just I've been hooked on pecans. I call them pecans. Lady K call them pecans, but I see Pecans, pecans. Now, am I pronouncing it wrong? Who out there say pecans and who says pecans? If you say pecans, put a 1 in the chat. If you say pecans, put a 2 in the chat. I want to see if I'm the only one to say pecans. Anyway, a trigger warning for a lot of this stuff that y'all are going to see. Okay, trigger warning. Let's go.
Is not sex trafficking. Had he been charged with domestic violence, had he been charged with assault, we would not be here right now.
The defense said that Sean Combs may be a lot of things. He may have committed domestic violence, but those aren't the crimes the defense said that he's charged with. So in effect, the argument is he's a criminal, just not the kind of criminal they say he is.
The first testimony of the trial taking jurors to Los Angeles, March 2016, in the hotel where that surveillance video was taken. The first witness, an LAPD officer who worked security at the hotel, he says he responded to a call for a woman in distress on the 6th floor.
When he got to the floor, he noticed that there was glass on the floor, that the vase and the flowers were broken.
The security guard described going back to Diddy's hotel room and standing in the doorway while Ventura grabbed her things. Inside, another man sitting at the corner of the bed.
So from the very start, the first witness brings the jury into that hallway where he said Sean Combs looked at him with a devilish stare and Cassie Ventura had a purple eye.
Sean Combs tried to offer him money, to give him money to make this go away. And he said he wouldn't accept the money.
The second witness to take the stand, Daniel Phillip, a man who said he was paid to have sex with Cassie on multiple occasions at several high-end New York City hotels while Diddy watched. The witness said he was paid between $700 and $6,000 each time.
So Mr. Phillip agreed to go to the Gramercy Hotel to do a performance for a bachelorette party. At least that's what he thought. But when he got to the hotel, to the room, that Cassie opened up the door. He did not know that was Cassie, and that she told him, well, it's my birthday and my husband wants to do something special. So can you give me a massage with this body oil? And then we can just take it from there and see where it leads.
Diddy allegedly in the corner masturbating, wearing a bandana over his face. During these meetups, he says Diddy would often give directions and at times tell him to step off and back up because he was going to get some.
Sean Combs's children, his mother.
I'm sorry, y'all. Y'all forgive me. But when I tell y'all that everything right here is raw, I have not, everything I'm playing for y'all tonight, I have not seen it before. I haven't seen what I'm playing. So I just researched these videos and the sources, and that's what we're going to be looking at. However, so he said that he would let the escort come in and start having sex with her and then say, back off, let me get me some. I'm sure they weren't wearing condoms. This is pretty freaking disgusting, y'all. It really is. Let's continue. Okay. Oh, by the way, the pecans argument won. Okay, everybody, Black Girl Beauty, all y'all with Lady K, that's okay, fine. I will stand on my own and say pecans. Doggone it. Let's go.
Mother came to court to support him, but when the testimony became graphic, his daughters stood up and walked out. When they came back in at one point, the testimony got more graphic about ejaculation, about urination. That was too much. They turned and walked out again.
Phillip also described witnessing Diddy drag and hit Cassie.
I'm sorry.
When asked by prosecutors,
who can sit there? Y'all, listen. Who gonna sit there and watch and hear about their daddy ejaculating and want to sit there and watch that? I don't blame the girls for getting up and walking out. Their daddy is a freaking disgusting mutt. That's crazy. I don't blame them for getting up and walking out.
Here's why I didn't intervene, he testified. My thoughts was that this was someone with unlimited power. and chances that even if I did go to the police, that I might still end up losing my life. Cassie, who's now 8 months pregnant, is expected to take the stand tomorrow.
Cassie's the case. Cassie Ventura, who has not spoken about this publicly except in a civil lawsuit, is taking the witness stand as a star witness.
Her husband and father of her children spotted at court today. If convicted, Combs could face life in prison.
Okay. All right, so that's that one. So that's day one. Okay. So Cassie's the case. As I was doing research, I also saw that she had settled the lawsuit for, not only did she get like $20 million from P. Diddy, but she also settled a lawsuit for $10 million against that hotel. So good for her. She deserved it. I mean, the public embarrassment of people watching her get just kicked and slammed and thrown and bruises and all this kind of stuff, like for her to be helping make sure that she gets justice and every other person gets justice also, she deserves to get paid for her pain and suffering. That's just my opinion. Okay. Oh, I got somebody that's on my side that say pecans too. Ha ha ha. That's right. Together, re-rate change. I love pecans. P-E-C-A-N-S. Pecans. Shoot, all the rest of y'all haters. Now, let's move on to day two, y'all. Let's move on to day two. Let's go. Let me share this with y'all. Here we go.
Today in court, we're seeing a lot of text messages back and forth from Cassie Ventura and Sean Combs. We're seeing some pictures of her from when she was allegedly assaulted by Sean Combs. And she tells the stories and gives context to that 2016 video that we've seen where Sean Combs is assaulting Cassie. And what she said is after that happened, she went to one of Sean Combs' employer's homes named D-Rock, who she said she was friendly with, he and the wife. But she said that same night she did end up going back to Sean Combs' house because she had a fitting for the perfect match. There was a premiere coming up. And then we saw pictures of her on that red carpet with Sean Combs. And she sort of explains, if you look closely, you can see a little bit of bruising. But we saw that there was an image she took where she had a busted lip. We never saw the black eye because those pictures that she took of herself, she said she wanted to cover it up. But she explains how she used makeup, how she had to hide the bruising and things of that nature. So we got a little bit of context from that 2016 video and also some pictures to accompany what she said happened that night.
And I believe they even said one of her friends called the police perhaps, but she decided not to reveal that it was Combs because at the time she didn't want to hurt him because they were still in a relationship. Is that correct?
Correct. Early on, the prosecution showed a picture of...
All right, ladies, I got to ask the question. Now, some people say that the reason why she did not call the police and her friend did is because Cassie suffered from Stockholm Syndrome. Okay? For those of y'all that don't know what Stockholm Syndrome is, that is when you eventually start to feel sorry for your abuser. You eventually start to build a false sense of love and care for the person that's actually abusing you. They're saying I've heard some people say that that's why she didn't call the police because she was suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Do y'all disagree? Or what do y'all think? What do y'all think? Why do y'all think, even in the heat of that moment, that she did not call the police on him? Let's continue.
Cassie and a very close friend of hers when they were 19 or 20 years old. So now you fast forward to 2016, that same woman is the one that Cassie said called the police because she was so irate about the fact that she saw her friend with this busted lip with a black eye. And she says her friend knew automatically based on other alleged incidents that had happened that this was, because of Sean Combs. So the police came to her house, according to Cassie. They asked her a few questions, but she said, the police said, well, who is the person that did this to you? She wouldn't answer, and she said they left.
Understood. Now, how did Diddy react while Cassie was on the stand? I know yesterday you said he was listening very intently. So is that the same case?
Yeah, more of the same. We see Combs listening very carefully. He's looking at the jurors. He's also, though, again, sort of shaking his head in defiance when
What's up, Jennifer
Cassie
Ward?
brings up the idea of drugs being offered to her all the time from.
Hey, Jennifer Ward, how are you? Welcome to the channel. Jennifer Ward says, let's see here. I was a DV, domestic violence victim. It never occurred to me to call the police. Okay. Okay. So it is possible. Okay. Yes. Praise God you made it through. That's right. Together. That's right. Praise God you made it through, Jennifer Ward. Thanks for coming to the channel. Let's continue, y'all.
Combs or people who associated with Combs. One thing that I thought was interesting today is that Cassie today in court said that she had an on and off again addiction to opiates. So this was her sort of giving us an inkling into what she was going through, not just with the alleged freak-offs, but her own struggles with addiction.
Yeah, and how this relationship perhaps led to the addiction or contributed to the addiction. Talk about, you mentioned some of the text messages that were read in court today, especially between Cassie and Sean Combs, and about not letting her secret get out and things like that. Talk about some of those text messages we saw.
Yeah, so a lot of text messages were shown from 2010, 2013, 2017. Essentially, there were text messages where she wishes him a happy Father's Day and says, I can't wait till we have a baby of our own. So there was a text message shared from 2017 where she said, nothing good comes out of freak-offs. And then she says, you treat me like you're Ike Turner. Ike Turner, as we know, had a volatile relationship with Tina Turner. And that was a nod to the abuse that she says she suffered. She said she used the drugs to numb herself because these freak-offs, again, were happening so regularly. She also talked about having urinary tract infections all the time, and that it was so bad, she said, that even the antibiotics that she used didn't even work anymore.
Wow.
She said there were times where she would have sex and have these freak-offs while she had the infection. And then she said, quote, I don't recommend it.
Yeah. Well, that's powerful right there.
Yeah.
What did she say about blackmail? Because she mentioned kind of that there was always maybe videos kind of used against her after the fact.
Y'all, I think one of y'all just brought it up in the chat about her having multiple STDs and stuff like that. Y'all, that is damn. That's when I tell y'all, I believe she deserves every bit of relief that she can get. I really do believe that. I don't care if she, even if she occasionally did want to participate voluntarily because she wanted to please him. Like the fact that he didn't have enough common care for her to say, hey, let's let your body heal. Because if she had STDs and these escorts was coming in and having sex with her, then that means he had STDs too. Like, damn. Let's go.
When she expressed maybe not wanting to do the freak-offs anymore.
So early on in this trial, the prosecutors told the jurors that they were going to see 2 videos of not only Cassie Ventura, but of someone else in these alleged freak-offs. So when you talk about video, according to Cassie, she was embarrassed by it. She even talked about, what would I tell my mom if something like this got out? She was saying she would be hurt for her family. So she did not want this to get out, even though she says she was partaking in all of these things in an effort to keep her relationship going with Sean Combs. She says she did these things because he wanted to do them and she wanted to make him happy. But something else happened today in court that was worth noting in reference to those text messages. There were messages where she seemingly wants to have a freak off, says things like, LOL, I can't wait. The prosecution asked her, why would you say that? if you didn't really want to do it? And she explained that she said those things because she was fearful of Combs and because she wanted to keep the relationship going.
Now, how crucial is that hotel surveillance video going to be for this entire case?
I think we keep seeing that surveillance video show up in this trial. So they talked about it yesterday. We talked about it today. It is the centerpiece, if you will, because without that video, we know that early when she said that she had been abused sexually and physically by Sean Combs, when she filed that civil lawsuit in 2023, before that video came out, we know Combs denied having abused her. So that's why I think this video is so crucial. And the prosecution is saying this is just one example. And they're using the testimony of Cassie saying that not only did it happen this time, but there were a lot of things that she claims happened that were not on camera.
Yeah. Now, how intense would you say the defense's cross-examination of her is going to be?
When you're talking about somebody who's facing up to life in prison, they have to go hard on her cross-examination to poke holes in what she's saying. We have not heard from the defense yet. We expect Cassie will be on the stand the rest of the day, possibly even a little bit of tomorrow before we get to cross-examination. But we imagine the defense will stick to what they sort of hinted to at the opening of this trial, which is that this was a toxic relationship. Is Combs a good guy? Maybe he's a jerk at times. You don't agree with his sex life, but does that mean that he committed a crime? That's going to be something the jury will have to answer. But I think we will see more of the same in terms of that type of questioning or those types of questions being posed as to was this a criminal enterprise and should this person be facing those types of charges. But I also believe that with so many times Ventura mentioning that she was not in control and that he was in control, and the people around him that were helping to sort of facilitate that, I think that's where you're hearing right now the argument on the side of the prosecution as it pertains to a criminal enterprise for Sean Combs' sexual desires.
I mean, is it your belief at this point the prosecution is trying to just paint a picture of potentially what even some of the consensual acts were before they get into the sex trafficking and the racketeering? Does it feel like it's an 8-week trial? The prosecution is just kind of trying to lay the scene so that the jury can picture Sean Combs at a freak-off?
I think a lot of people are not used to hearing the details of someone's sex life in this way. And they are so salacious, but to the prosecution and to Cassie Ventura, they're important in her story. So I think that's what's happening. They're laying out years of what they're calling abuse, physically, emotionally, sexually, and we'll see, what happens from there. Sitting behind Cassie Ventura's husband, he's sort of right behind me, and I kind of can see his face. And I can tell you right now, I can see him and Cassie's brother sort of glaring at the Combs family, looking at Combs when they are showing those images of Cassie with the deep cut in her eyebrow. When they were showing the 13 pictures of men, different races, predominantly Black men, who had the freak-offs with Combs and Ventura, according to Ventura, she was able to name some of those people. She was able to name the locations of where they happened. Some she said were regular, but there were maybe 2 or 3 that she didn't remember the name, but she recognized 13 men in that court today that the jurors saw their faces. And she said she had sex with them as part of freak-offs. I can only imagine what that's like for her husband. But they seem to be very, strong. And you look at her Instagram, she thanks her husband for being supportive, for being there for her. But yeah, to hear sort of those details of something that happened before they started dating must be difficult. These jurors knew before they took that oath that they might be privy to some very graphic sexual experiences that were had with Cassie Ventura and other people. Those videos could come out and they will be very revealing. The press is not allowed to see them, but the jurors will see those videos. And for them, I think it will help them understand what the prosecution is alleging in reference to coercion, threats, abuse, and those types of things.
Kim Porter was addressed regarding her birthday. What can you share about that and how that crucial moment?
There was a text message where Ventura alludes to being tired of doing freak-offs and says, "Why don't you call Kim?" Now, she doesn't say Kim Porter, but we know that Combs had a long-time relationship as well with Kim Porter, who's the mother of his children. So that was something that we hadn't heard or didn't see coming, maybe. But that was Ventura, it appears, saying, I'm not the only one. Why don't you go get somebody else to do it, because I'm tired of doing this. She keeps talking about how humiliated she was, how she felt so dirty. And she said she did it too, because it made her feel like it was the one thing she was good at when it came to her relationship with Sean Combs. What I gather from that comment is there was always time after those freak offs, she says, where they were spending that one-on-one time. So according to her, she's doing this because she felt like it was something she had to do. She called it a job at one point during testimony. But the only people who really know are those people who were involved. But you can look around the courtroom and see that there are moments where everyone's kind of, squirming a little bit in their chair, because you don't expect to hear about people's sex life in this type of detail every day.
Wow. Okay, so that was day two. Crazy, very graphic. Brought out a whole lot more information about the extreme conditions that Cassie was a part of. Having multiple STDs and still being forced to perform sexually. Basically just like hey, Karen Johnson, how you doing? Thanks for coming in. I'm sorry I got you up so late. Basically using her body as just a let me not be so graphic, but just a hole. And that's crazy. That's crazy. All right. Let's go to day 3, y'all. Let's go to day 3. Let me share this with y'all. Hold on.
Good evening, I'm Mike Marzo with a recap of what was day 3 in the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. Once again, the prosecution's star witness, Cassie Ventura, was on the stand, and her testimony was both graphic and disturbing. She told jurors that Combs raped her in 2018 after they had broken up. She testified that he physically abused her and threatened some of her boyfriends, including rapper Kid Cudi, and that he blackmailed her by threatening to release explicit sexual videos that could have damaged her career. As for Combs, who has pleaded not guilty and maintains his innocence, when Ventura finished her direct testimony, he turned to his family members assembled in the spectators gallery and mouthed to them, "I'm okay." What a day. We'll be joined by ABC News legal analyst Shauna Lloyd, who is inside the courtroom. We're going to talk to her in just a moment. But first up, with a recap of what happened today, here's Eyewitness News reporter Kimberly Richardson.
Today inside federal court in Lower Manhattan, Cassie...
I'm sorry. So they're saying when this stuff came out that P. Diddy looked towards his family and was like, I'm okay. I'm okay. Wouldn't the appropriate thing to do be say, I'm sorry? I'm sorry y'all seeing this. I'm sorry that this is going on. Sorry that y'all got to sit through this. Like, I'm confused. I'm okay. Like you the damn victim. Let's continue.
Ventura told jurors during her more than decade-long relationship with Sean Combs, she felt, quote, scared, trapped, like, how do you get out of this situation? The prosecution's star witness revealed the names of 13 male escorts she says Combs instructed her to hire for so-called freak-offs, sex and drug-filled encounters that sometimes lasted as long as 4 days. Ventura maintained she wanted no part, but did so because she feared Combs' violent reaction if she opted out. The jury saw this text message, Ventura telling Combs, quote, nothing good comes out of FOs, freak-offs, anymore. You treat me like you're Ike Turner.
They're naming names. They talked about the driver giving her drugs, and they're doing the sex trafficking because they're talking about the hitting. It's force, fraud, and coercion.
This afternoon at first, the judge ordered all monitors in the courtroom and overflow rooms be turned off, so only jurors, attorneys, Ventura, and Combs could see 7 images. Ventura testified the images were from videos of freak-offs showing herself with an escort, another one of her alone with oil on her skin, standing next to a bed, yet another, she said, of a woman who once worked for Combs. Ventura says the weekly encounters took a toll on her health. At times, she said, even prescription meds couldn't treat frequent infections. Ventura told jurors Combs repeatedly threatened to release the sexually explicit videos and embarrass her. Still, she said she loved him and sent this text to the father of 7, quote, "I can't wait to have a baby with you one day. Happy Father's Day."
The defense is going to try to say that this was all consensual. And they're going to say, why did you go back? They're going to say, why did you send this text? Why did you say I love you? So they're going to really make it try to seem like she had more control than she did.
Ventura is now married, expecting her 3rd child. Her husband, Alex Fine, listened as his wife described one of the last times she says she saw Combs in 2018 when
Oh, I can only imagine what he's going through hearing this. Rumor has it that when he heard about P. Diddy raping her in 2018, that he actually either punched the wall or punched a hole in the wall. It's crazy. By the way, some people may have opposing views on this channel in the chat. I respect everybody's views. My personal view is I just don't. I don't see her as being a willing participant. I think that she was scared into doing whatever he told her to do, or she knew she would get messed up. And I think sometimes it's easy for people to say, "Oh, look at that text message. They wanted it. She wanted it. She wanted to be raped. She wanted to be beat. She wanted to have free calls." Sometimes people have power over people to make them do things they really don't want to do. Okay, I agree with this. What Together We Break Chain said, DVY, when you have that kind of power, and he and she victimize that person, you beat them down so bad that their sense of understanding is gone. That is true. You see it all the time. I totally agree with that. All right, let's move on.
She said Combs raped her, telling jurors, quote, "I just remember crying and saying no, but it was very fast. I don't know if he noticed."
Our thanks to Kimberly Richardson for that recap. We're joined now by ABC News legal analyst Shauna Lloyd. Shauna, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
You were inside the courtroom today. Take us inside, because it was one of the more dramatic days. And this is day 3, but I mean, it seems like we're ramping up every day. Today was the day the jurors were shown screenshots of these sexual encounters that Cassie Ventura says Diddy described as freak-offs. What was it like in that moment when that was happening, and when the decision was made that only the jury and Diddy himself were going to be able to see these images?
Absolutely. So first we have to think about what happened and why we're not seeing the full video. And the judge decided that these women had been threatened with these videos before. And so in order not to re-victimize them, they were not going to show the entire videos, which is why the jury was looking at the stills. Now, the stills were used for identification purposes to identify Cassie there and others. But when it came on, everyone was at rapt attention. Everyone was looking at their screen. You know, you could see some of the jurors had confusion on their face. Some of them were almost like, I almost don't want to look, because I think just hearing the violence, hearing what was happening, it's been so graphic in the courtroom that a lot of them were a little bit reluctant, but they dug in and you saw them really pay attention to what was being shown.
What was Mr. Combs doing?
Mr. Combs was pretty much staring ahead. He looked at the jury for the most part. At the end, he acknowledged his family at different points. During the break, he also spoke to his publicist, who was seated there as well.
How does that play when you talk about the 2016 video of the assault that happened in 2016 in that LA hallway in that hotel, Diddy assaulting Cassie Ventura. That's been admitted by all sides here. How do you have that? And now you have these images with these sexual encounters. How does that play with the jury so early in this case that we expect this trial to last for several more weeks?
Absolutely. I mean, we know that this is definitely domestic violence. Both sides have admitted it and they have acknowledged it to the jury. Now, when we look at that video, we're not looking at the domestic violence aspect of it, but we are looking at the violence because let's remember the trafficking charge means that she was being moved from place to place for these commercial sex activities, and it was under threat of violence or coercion. So when we look at what was it that made her do it, that threat is of physical violence. And so we see what happens and why she felt so threatened and why it was she didn't fight back or say, I don't want to do these things, even though she didn't want to do it.
Part of the pattern of violence also introduced another well-known name to this case, rapper Kid Cudi. And it was 2011 when Cassie Ventura was dating Kid Cudi, and she says that Diddy found out through looking through some emails and threatened to blow up his car. What happened and how did that play inside that courtroom?
So apparently, according to her testimony, he was able to get her phone during one of these freak-offs. He saw emails regarding her items, her toiletry items being at his home. So he then organized a dinner where they sat down and discussed it. He threatened to blow up the car. He threatened that he would not be in the country when it happened, according to her testimony. So what we see here, and her testimony was so important because what she said was, I felt like I had to break it off so we would all be safe, which means that she made the decision based on the idea that both herself and Kid Cudi would be safer if she just agreed with him.
And the prosecution is trying to paint this as a violent man, as a person who is the head of this criminal enterprise. And at one point today, Cassie Ventura described an incident in 2018 after they had broken up. She says that Diddy raped her in her living room. But then she also testified that she had a consensual encounter with him after that. How does the jury place that in the context of what the prosecution is trying to prove?
It's going to be really hard because typically what we would see is after a rape such as what she experienced and described, someone is not going to go back to that same person and have consensual sex. But this is where the experts come in. They are going to testify that this is not an unusual pattern in domestic violence instances. There are these cyclical cycles of being loved, wanted, and getting the attention that you need, as well as the violence. And so it is all part of the cycle. So that is where the expert's going to come in to clarify that for the jury.
Tomorrow, it's the defense attorney's opportunity to question her. And we know that she settled a civil lawsuit against Diddy for $20 million, and that was admitted today. How do defense attorneys approach this? And by the way, Cassie Ventura is pregnant. She's in her third trimester. And so, you know, just with everything that's going on and these horrible stories that she's recounting, she's up there in the state where she's, you know, in front of the jury. And how does that play into what the defense does and how they operate in trying to cross-examine her to poke holes in her stories?
Absolutely. I mean, when you're looking at a vulnerable witness like that, I mean, she is very pregnant. We see she looks like she's due any day now. So when you talk about that, her demeanor, her soft-spoken voice, that a lot of times she's like, I don't even remember. So what you're going to see is what I like to call quiet intensity. I think that they are going to go into this cross-examination and they're going to be looking to get to the information that they want to prove their case in chief. They're going to talk about that settlement. Why were you motivated to go for that route? Why didn't you call the police at any point in time? They're going to be looking at the contradiction between her texts, which are saying, I'd like to have a freak off, versus what she's saying she felt on the inside. So we're going to see all of those things attacked on cross-examination because that is where the reasonable doubt comes in. And that's what they're going to be seeking to introduce for the jury.
And how much of a struggle will it be for the prosecution to go back and remind jurors from their point of view why these things happened?
Well, we're going to see a redirect. We will see them actually reposition her after the cross because we expect this to be about a day and a half of cross estimated right now. They're going to go back in and they're going to refocus on the things that they want you to pay attention to, which is that the abuse started very early on. He had her career in his hands. He told her he would release these tapes. He would embarrass her. They're also going to focus on the abuse because that is what allowed her to acquiesce to his wishes despite not wanting to do these things.
Only have about 20 seconds left, but I'm curious. You've watched Diddy throughout this process. Is this weighing on him? Do you see his change in demeanor as the testimony gets more graphic?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you see a change. By the end of the day, typically, although when he typically gets into court, he's upright and sits, typically by the end of the day, he's a little more slumped. I think the weight of the testimony, the weight of what's at stake here is definitely weighing on him. And you see him very thoughtful. He's very intense when speaking with his attorneys. He's very active in his defense. You see him passing notes and paying attention to everything they're saying.
It's important to point out not only is he facing the potential, which would be essentially life in prison, but also his family's future, because the financial impact of this could be very, very great as well when you're talking about sex trafficking and a criminal enterprise like racketeering.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about the legacy that he's built, it's all in jeopardy right now. And it's a legacy that's been built over 20 years.
Shauna Lloyd back in court tomorrow. We'll see how day 4 plays out. Thanks for your perspective. We appreciate it. So many.
You know, when you look at this case, you try to, especially as a blogger, a journalist, a reporter, you try to be unbiased. You know, you try to be to where people can't say, "Oh, you biased one way or the other." But coming out of the other case that we was covering, and when you hear about these types of things, and you hear about the racketeering and all that going across state lines and all these kinds of things, like there's certain things that just stick out. Now, the fact that his energy, that testimony had to hurt him. That testimony of her being on that stage and the pictures and the videos and the judge telling the people to get out and just have a few people in there, like, that's powerful, y'all. That is powerful. Together We Break Chains said, Atmos, it was reported that Diddy's oldest son is following in his foot. I believe he is. I believe he is. Andrew said this case takes us back to RSK. It does. All right, y'all. We're on to day 4. Let's get to day 4. Let's see what happened. Here we go. Let me share this with y'all. Day 4. Let's go.
I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. The defense getting their chance today to question Sean Diddy Combs' ex, Cassie Ventura. She spent 2 days telling the jury about how he forced her into drug-fueled freak-offs against her will with male prostitutes. Combs' defense now trying to paint a very different picture of their decade-long relationship. Cassie grilled about explicit text messages with Combs as the defense tried to show the jury the freak-offs were a defining feature of their relationship. This, as the judge told the defense to wrap this up by tomorrow because Cassie, who was 8.5 months pregnant, could go into labor any minute now. Combs faces the possibility of life in prison if convicted. He's pleaded not guilty and has denied all wrongdoing. We'll break down everything that happened in court today. We'll also get into the top searches on the web right now tied to the Diddy trial, like white nail polish and can Trump pardon Diddy? We'll answer those questions in a bit. First, though, let's go to Aaron.
What? That's a great question. I've been reading about that and hearing about that. What do y'all think? Do any of y'all think that Trump will pardon P. Diddy? If you feel like he will pardon him, put a 1 in the chat. If you feel like there ain't no way in hell Trump gonna do that, put a 2 in the chat. If you feel like Trump will pardon Diddy, put a 1 in the chat. If you feel like he won't, put a 2 in the chat. Let's go.
Aaron Katursky, our chief investigative correspondent outside the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Aaron, can you take us inside the courtroom? The defense is finally getting to question Cassie Ventura. What was this questioning like?
The questioning was very intense, although it was relatively gentle. But here was a woman who is a mother now, expecting her third child at any moment, with her husband in the courtroom, reading aloud the most personal and intimate text messages you could ever imagine being read in open court about the sex she desired, the orgasms she had, and what she wanted to do with her intimate partner at the time, Sean Combs. And this was, if embarrassing for her, she seemed kind of resigned to it because she read it in matter-of-fact, rather kind of calm, flat tone, and she never wavered. She never lost her composure.
I'm curious, Aaron, what was the reaction in the courtroom as she read those text messages?
Money talks.
Well, some of the jurors, one woman shook her head, but most of them appeared to lean in toward their screen so they could read along and follow along as some of the messages, maybe the less eye-popping ones, but nonetheless pointed toward the evidence, where she said, "I'm always ready to freak off. I love to F-O, to freak off." Because the idea on the defense side is to say that Cassie Ventura was not coerced into these sexual encounters with male prostitutes under threat of violence or humiliation, the way prosecutors describe, but was a willing, even eager participant in the swingers lifestyle that they say Sean Combs led.
Aaron, there was also some pretty surprising testimony today about Combs's drug use, allegations that he was addicted to opiates and at one point overdosed. What did we learn?
Well, this was part of the defense strategy, to concede that he's a drug user. Now, maybe the public didn't know the extent, but the defense was pretty frank that at one point he was addicted to opiates. At one point he flew to Mexico to try what Cassie Ventura called a plant medicine type remedy that's not legal in the United States, that the two together tried just about every drug, MDMA, ecstasy, ketamine, that the night of the now infamous freak-off in 2016 in the Los Angeles Intercontinental Hotel, where an assault was then captured on video, that maybe Combs was high on a bad batch of MDMA. But the idea here, Eva, I think, was to say that the violence from Combs was not to coerce Cassie Ventura into sex. It was the result of drugs, or in another aspect, was the result of jealousy and her infidelity. Because we also heard today, Eva, about her dating Kid Cudi and about her dating the actor Michael B. Jordan, and how that led to some pretty scary arguments, as Ventura put it, with Sean Combs.
Aaron, I also have to ask you, because the defense asked her today on the stand about drugs in the baby oil. What did she say about that?
That was kind of a throwaway, and it just right before a break. But I think there's been some rumor about that there had been drugs in the baby oil, or the baby oil was tainted. But Cassie Ventura said that there were no drugs in the baby oil.
No.
She said plenty of other things about the baby oil during the course of her testimony, but drugs weren't apparently part of it.
Yeah, an internet rumor she dispelled there on the stand today. Aaron Kotursky, thank you so much there from the courthouse. Now let's break down some of the testimony from today's cross-examination of Cassie Ventura with ABC News legal.
Okay, so if I heard that right, they're saying Cassie is saying that there was not. I did hear people saying that there was drugs or something chemical in the baby oil that made people that absorbed into their pores, that made them go into some type of sexual trance and just forget about what was going on and all that. So it sounds to me, if I heard that right, let me make sure. Hold on.
Tainted, but Cassie Ventura said that there were no drugs in the baby oil.
No.
She said plenty of other things about the baby oil during the course of her testimony, but drugs weren't apparently part of it.
Okay, there we go. So that dispels that. That dispels that. And if anybody would know if there was drugs in the baby oil, I think she would definitely know. Okay, so that dispels that there was drugs in the baby oil. Let's move on. That's why we listen to stuff, y'all. That's why we get the facts. Here we go.
Yeah, an internet rumor she dispelled there on the stand today. Aaron Katursky, thank you so much there from the courthouse. Now let's break down some of the testimony from today's cross-examination of Cassie Ventura with ABC News legal contributor and trial attorney Brian Buckmeyer. You were also in the courtroom there today. So I'm curious to you, what was the standout moment?
Well, to narrow it down to just one is very difficult. So give me a chance to say two. Of course, those salacious text messages that everyone's talking about, details that are hard to get into. But I think not just the text messages, but the order in which they came about. The defense making the argument that Cassie and Combs had decided to have a freak off some days in advance, and the days leading up to those are where those salacious text messages came in, making it seem like Cassie really wanted to participate in them. But also, I didn't think I was going to wake up this morning and find myself having just an iota of sympathy for Combs, because in the end of the morning, the defense made it seem like these two might have been two addicts participating in sexual encounters, and that's where the violence came from. Cassie testifying that she believed that at some point in time, Combs was an addict trying to get out of it, and that the withdrawal made him very irritable and angry at times.
We also have to talk about the jealousy that she talked about there on the stand in their relationship. And Cassie's concern about being a side piece, not the main girl. Tell us about that line of questioning.
So I think we're going to get there eventually when we get a broader sense of this. But don't forget, Kim Porter, whose children and that she shares with Sean Combs are in the court. I think the argument that we're having here is we see text messages like this. I'm nervous that I'm just becoming the girlfriend that you get your fantasies off with, and that's it. I don't get that, the other part, because Kim Porter is still in the scene. She is the quote unquote main girl. And I think the argument here is that Cassie is indulging in these fantasies, hoping that if she keeps doing it, that Sean Combs will pick her. And the defense, I think, is making the argument that she's not getting the attention or the love that she wants. She's not becoming the main girl here. And it's the jealousy that is fueling the violence, not the fact that Sean Combs is trafficking her. And we start to see resemblance of that argument.
We heard Aaron Katursky mention the defense referenced those text messages today. What stood out to you?
So again, in the text messages, I think the conversation about how freak-offs were a part of their conversations, how they talked about going out and having a good time, but also plan the freak-offs. And the freak-offs seem to be part and parcel with the relationship. Looking at the dates again, let's just go back to this message real quick. That's 2009, where she says she's nervous about just being a girlfriend. And here's 2017, some years later, saying, I love the freak-offs when we both wanted. It seems like the issue wasn't about freak-offs or not freak-offs, but that she wanted and enjoyed the freak-offs where they had a freak-off and then they had sexual relations afterwards, or vice versa, but they had that intimate time as a part of the freak-offs, not just that the freak-offs were bad altogether.
Mm-hmm. Not just something he wanted to do, something she wanted to participate in as well. The defense attorney has taken the lead here today in the questioning. Tell us about who this attorney is.
So Anna Estevos, she is the defense attorney who is cross-examining Cassie Ventura. We see some of her positions. He's a partner of the firm, White Collar Defense, worked as a federal defender in California for a year. I think she graduated law school in 2015. And so I see a lot of criticism online about her cross-examination. I would say from a factual standpoint, yes, you may see a defense attorney meander in the way that they ask questions, meander in the way that they're trying to argue. But the issue that stood out to me is some of the difficulties that she had in terms of getting the evidence in front of the court. The judge helping her out, sometimes making mistakes. And another thing that I'll add a little color of the court, the amount of notes that were handed up to her from Combs, Tenny Garagos. At one point, it was just pink note after pink note after pink note. She had about 10 or so sitting next to her. And then I noticed at some point, the pink notes ran out and they started giving her yellow notes. Just so much information to help her get along with this cross-examination. I think she's doing a good job of getting the facts, just getting there seems to be a little difficult.
Interesting. Brian Buckmeyer, thank you so much for being with us today. And still ahead, after 4 days of testimony and 1 day of cross-examination, which side seems to have the leg up here? Our legal team is standing by. Also coming up, will Trump pardon Diddy? Why that's one of the top searches about this trial. Stay with us. Welcome back to ABC News Live. Day 4 of testimony has wrapped up, the first day of Cassie Ventura's cross-examination. The defense peppering her with questions about infidelity and jealousy in their relationship, showing the jury sexually explicit evidence concealed by privacy screens from the rest of the court. It's time to break down these legal arguments that we've seen today. We've got Brian Buckmeyer playing the defense today and Bernarda Villalona playing prosecutor. Brian, I'm going to start with you since the defense is doing the cross at the moment. Is the defense punching holes in this case?
I think to some degree they are, but as I'm listening to this testimony and seeing this cross-examination, I don't think it's so much that they're punching holes. It's more so that they're creating a separate narrative altogether. And I don't think that they're actually winning so much, and I think that the prosecution isn't winning because they're creating a separate narrative that is reasonable, that does create doubt, and that's what a defense attorney does. I'm left after the morning, especially when I was sitting there in court and reading the transcript as we continue, is this trafficking? Or is this two individuals who are addicted to drugs, violently and aggressively interacting with each other? Is this domestic violence or is this trafficking? I'm still having that question mark, but I don't think this witness is going to bring us all the way there. I think we still have to wait for the trial to continue.
Bernarda, you're sitting there as the prosecution watching this cross. You getting nervous?
Not at all, because the defense attorney is falling flat in terms of the delivery, in terms of how she's questioning Cassie Ventura, in terms of the logic in her questioning. It's all over the place and it's very difficult to follow. So yes, the defense attorney know what all the text messages are and the prosecution does as well. But guess who needs to know? The jury does. So the way and the manner that it's being delivered and the way that she's being questioned is falling flat. So as the prosecutor, I'm like, okay, what's your next question? Because you're also giving a lot of time for Cassie to think about whatever question that you're posing to her, which is not good for the defense.
And the prosecution's going to have a chance to clean all this up after.
Absolutely.
So what
but it's not much to clean up, though. It's not much to clean up. The prosecutor is aware of these text messages because guess what? The prosecutor was.
All right, y'all, we're going to move on to day 5 because it's just them giving their opinions about it. So let's move on to day 5. Let me share this with y'all. Day 5, y'all.
I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. The first week of testimony in the high-profile sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy trial against Sean Diddy Combs coming to a close. After 4 days on the stand, Cassie Ventura, Diddy's ex, and the woman whose civil lawsuit really cracked open this case, wrapping up her testimony. Earlier in the day, attorneys getting heated over completing her questioning today. She's 8.5 months pregnant and on the verge of going into labor. Prosecutors claiming the defense dragging it out, trying to force a mistrial. The testimony, again, graphic. Ventura's husband, Alex Fine, at one point walking out of court as his wife was peppered with questions about allegedly being raped. Also today, Dawn Richard spotted entering court, the former member of Diddy's girl group, DIDDY Kane, who prosecutors also called to the stand. The hip-hop mogul has firmly denied all allegations in this case. We have a lot to get to, including a new statement from Cassie right after she wrapped up her testimony and why Chris Brown's name came up while she was on the witness stand. But first, let's get right to our chief investigative reporter, Aaron Katursky, who has been inside the federal courthouse in Manhattan all week. He joins us outside court right now. Aaron, Cassie Ventura completing her testimony. She's been pretty stoic, but this afternoon she broke down in tears.
She did, Eva, and she had kept her composure for most of her 4 days on the witness stand under really uncomfortable cross-examination and testimony generally, the most intimate, graphic, demeaning things that you could imagine. She spoke about in open court in front of everybody. And she broke down today when she was asked by prosecutor Emily Johnson on redirect examination whether Sean Combs had beat her during freak-offs, those marathon drug-fueled sex sessions with male prostitutes. And she said, yes. And then she was asked, after the defense had suggested she might have been motivated by money here, would she give back the $20 million that Sean Combs gave her as part of a civil settlement? She said, I would give the money back because I would have agency and autonomy and I wouldn't have to work so hard to get those things back.
Aaron, at one point during Cassie's testimony, her husband actually got up and left.
He had to. Alex Fine was told by the defense that he might be called as a witness. So when Cassie Ventura started talking about the alleged rape she said Sean Combs committed in 2018, that's when he had to leave. It couldn't have been comfortable anyway for him. But the defense had tried to raise questions about Cassie's recollection. At first, she said it was September 2018. Then the defense pointed out how she changed the time frame to August of 2018. And then the defense suggested she made it up when her now husband, Alex Fine, found out that she was having a sexual night with Sean Combs, because apparently Fine had FaceTimed her. She didn't answer the call. And later, when she was explaining what was going on with Sean Combs, she said, Sean Combs raped me. Now, of course, Cassie disputes that, and prosecutors tried to clean that up on redirect, but saying that Cassie Ventura had no doubt that Sean Combs did indeed carry out that rape.
Aaron, you've been in court all week. Have there been any reactions from the jury that stood out to you?
Couple today. The jury was very interested in the exchange over Cassie's recollection of the rape allegation. They were paying close attention there. They got a little bored in the middle of the day when cross-examination seemed a bit disjointed and meandering, no real one topic or one time frame. But then toward the end, the jury got to hold some of the evidence. They got to see the money, the drugs, the baby oil that federal agents said they found in Sean Combs' hotel room in Midtown the night he was arrested.
Aaron, after Cassie got off the stand, 2 more witnesses were called. Who did we hear from?
So the federal agent who helped coordinate the search of Sean Combs' hotel room, she's the one that held up $9,000 in cash, kind of fanned it like a deck of cards for the jury to see. She also testified that there was ketamine and MDMA found in Combs' hotel room and other, kinds of supplies that Cassie Ventura said he would stock for freak-offs. The night he was arrested in New York back in 2024, and then Dawn Richard, the member of Diddy, Dirty Money and Identity Kane, she said she was a witness to Sean Combs attacking Cassie Ventura.
Wow.
Aaron Koturski for us there outside court in Lower Manhattan. Thank you so much.
Whoa. Oh, shoot. So she was a witness to watching him beat on her. That's huge. That's huge. That's not good.
Much for joining us all week. Let's bring in our ABC News legal contributor, Brian Buckmeyer. You were also there at court today. What do you think was the standout moment of the day?
So I think it was kind of hard to piece together what the standout moment was because, as Aaron Koturski pointed out, the cross-examination seemed to meander at times. And I think on top of that, never really got to land the plane for the point they were trying to make. But as I've been following this case, I thought the timeline was very interesting because we know certain facts about this case. Cassie Ventura, when she releases her album, of course, when Kim Potter, the mother of Sean Combs' twin daughters and one son, when they had those children, when they broke up. And what's really important, I think, is near this end, because this is what the defense is trying to really hone in on, that all of this back and forth, the alleged rape, the consensual sex that she had after the alleged rape, when her now husband finds out about all of this, what the defense is trying to make a point of is the breakup between Cassie and Combs really happens just before Kim Potter dies. And we all know very publicly that Sean Combs comes out and says Kim Potter was his soulmate. And I think they're trying to make the argument that that's why this all broke up. Not because of the alleged rape, not because of the freak-offs, but because of this, really trying to weave in this narrative of jealousy in this case.
They really were trying to kind of talk about the jealousy, the infidelity, that pattern between the two of them. Chris Brown was mentioned today. Apparently Combs accused her of dancing with him. She denied that. What was this all about?
So we heard a lot of celebrity names, like you're correct. Chris Brown being one of them, dancing with Cassie, according to Sean Combs. We also heard about her dating Kid Cudi for a point of time. And also talking about, of course, Alex Fine, who she was dating at the time, but had that consensual sexual encounter with Sean Combs while, and the defense pointed this out, while she got a call from him. And that was a very tense moment in court because I think they're trying to point out this infidelity, jealousy, back and forth, and a lot of big names were mentioned in this case.
Also in court today, there was this heated argument between the attorneys over when they were going to finish Cassie's testimony. What was that all about?
So interesting enough, if you watched us yesterday, we touched on this about the bit of the gamesmanship. And so it did get really heated for a while because at the end of the day, this case has been going on for a while. And the judge had said this cross-examination, redirect, all of that with Cassie Ventura must end by today because she's 8 months pregnant and she has to go off and live her life and give birth. Well, the defense was really, really running out the clock. And I think in an attempt to try to get the last word there. But through some miracle, they were able to get all of the exhibits in. They did end early. There was a recross, redirect, recross, redirect. We went back and forth for a while. Ultimately, Cassie Ventura was off the stand. No issue of mistrial, which the government brought up. And then now we're continuing on the case.
All right, Brian Buckmeyer, we're going to have more with you in just a little bit. As Brian mentioned, Cassie Ventura is nearly 9 months pregnant, and there was some urgency to wrap up her testimony today because she's due any day now. I want to bring in ABC News medical contributor Dr. Alok Patel. Okay, so break this down for us. How urgent was it really for her to be done with this testimony?
You know, Eva, there is an urgency to discuss a safe and healthy birth plan when someone is at 9 months. Generally speaking, if somebody is in a healthy pregnancy and everything is going okay, people can safely work up until their due date. This can obviously change depending on the situation. You also have to think about if a job is high risk and the long hours and the physical and mental toll it must take to sit in a courtroom all day long. This is why this is an important decision that has to be taken with an individual and a healthcare team for the safest option and to make sure there's enough of a buffer to prepare for that delivery.
And Cassie Ventura testified today that throughout her pregnancy, she's continued to take the drug Suboxone. Can you explain what that medication is used for? Does that make her pregnancy more high risk?
You know, Suboxone is a medication that is commonly used to treat opioid use disorder, and it can be used in pregnancy. It's actually made up of two medications. One is to kind of reduce the risk of cravings, and one is to reduce the misuse probability. And so it can be used safely in pregnancies, and this is much safer than having a pregnancy in someone who has an untreated opioid use disorder, not only when it comes to the effects this could have on a pregnancy or developing baby, but also the risk of overdose. So technically speaking, any pregnancy where substance use disorder is involved is considered high risk, but a pregnancy where someone is being medically supervised with medication-assisted treatment and taking Suboxone, generally speaking, can be safe. And this is much better than someone going through a pregnancy without any treatment, both for mom and for the baby.
And just to be clear, you are not her doctor. You are a medical doctor, and we are really grateful to have your analysis. This has to be a stressful experience. Are there any risks that come from high stress so late in pregnancy?
You know, even multiple studies, including recommendations from national organizations such as the March of Dimes and ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, have warned about the potential effects of both chronic and acute stress on pregnancy health. This can increase the risk of blood pressure, blood flow to a baby. This can affect the immune system and potentially cause some complications such as preterm labor. Now, again, it depends on the individual, but this is why managing stress alongside a whole host of mental health conditions is so important during pregnancy.
Dr. Patel, thank you so much for being with us. Still ahead, Cassie's message to her supporters after getting off the witness stand. Stay with us.
All right, y'all. Let's get to day 6. Let's get to day 6. There we go. All right.
Day 6 of the DIDDY trial, and Cassie Ventura took the stand and testified for nearly a full day about her relationship with Diddy. And I believe that the testimony was more intense, more sensational, and I think more disturbing than I or just about anybody realized it was going to be. Derek, if you can for us, give us the highlights of Cassie's testimony. How did this go down? She was on the stand for better part of 5 or 6 hours today. What exactly happened?
Yeah, this really was a full day of testimony. It's the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. Cassie came to the stand. She is, of course, pregnant. and she was ready to testify about the full course of her relationship with Diddy. And remember, they were together for 10 years. This was a decade-long relationship, and that will come into play when the defense has an opportunity to cross-examine her and ask her about the terms of that relationship.
The whole idea of consent, yeah.
But this was her laying out the narrative in the prosecution's case in chief. And she squarely addresses that beating video in the Intercontinental Hotel in 2016. But even before then, they go back in time and said, when did these freak-offs really start? And she really painted a picture of the very first freak-off, where she says she was 22 years old. This occurred at one of Diddy's homes. She said it was highly directed. There was masquerade masks involved. There were escorts involved. There were at least 2 sessions in that first freak-off. And the session was over when the escort, who had been paid for the services, was done, had sort of performed the services that they were paid for. She says that she felt as though she couldn't say no to these freak-offs. She had dated Diddy for enough time at that point that saying no didn't seem like an option to her because he would get very angry. She was worried about sort of him blackmailing her potentially.
This is everything. Could she have left? And I think at some level the answer is yes. She could have gone to police. She was not physically restrained. She went out. She performed jobs. She traveled all around the world without him.
They dated. They were on red carpets together. They were in a relationship.
At any point, she could have physically left, gone to the police, gone to friends, gone to family, said, I want out. Apparently, none of that happened. Obviously, the defense is going to make a big deal about that. But
she would say psychologically, I felt trapped.
But and it's not
by that relationship.
It's not just, and there's a point to that, right?
There's a big point to it.
She testified to routine physical abuse, both during the freak-offs and outside of the freak-offs. Certainly emotional abuse, and also her career prospects largely tied to him.
Yes.
And she also, just for what it's worth, knew him to be a violent person outside of her relationship with him. And I'm sure there was some element of fear there. But nevertheless, I think it's worth noting, because defense is sure is not going to make a big deal of it probably tomorrow, that at any point she could have gone to police, she could have gone to family, she could have gotten protection, and she didn't.
Remember, the first witness who came on yesterday, though, said that there was physical violence towards her, that he bore witness in hearing slapping during one occasion, said he could no longer perform sexually because it was so upsetting to him to see Diddy be violent with Cassie. So they have set up that some of this coercion, which might have been mental and in her subjective state of mind, she felt trapped. Some of it may have also been physical. We're really getting down to the brass tacks about what is coercion. You know, coercion is forcing someone against their will to do something, but it doesn't necessarily take place at gunpoint or knife point. These aren't Central Park rapes. This was in the context of a 10-year relationship. So it is hard to wrap your mind around, well, how could you be coerced into doing things you don't want for a 10-year span? So to establish that, they're going to really paint very vivid pictures of what the sexual terms of this relationship were. Were there promises and threats? She mentioned feeling like there could be blackmail. Was there monitoring and control? That's another form of potential coercion. And Diddy orchestrated these things, according to the prosecutors, and kept very tight tabs on how she did her nails. She testified that they had to look a certain way. Was there violence and intimidation? According to the first witness, there was some violence. And obviously, when you watch that beating video, that is certainly violent.
Well, let's leave that for a second, just because I think everything comes to a head with that video.
Yes.
There's so much before that, as you were mentioning, the nails. He directed according to Cassie's testimony, directed every single element of the freak-offs. How she looked, how her appearance was. He said it, according to her, he said, you look too Hispanic. I want you to change your hair. You know, every minute detail, where the man was to be, when he was going to have sex with her, what pre-sexual acts they were going to engage in together. She had to literally drop into a bathtub full of baby oil because he liked seeing her slick during the sexual performances.
And you can do all of these things consensually. You really can.
Which is why the issue of coercion is so important, fundamental to the case.
It really is. I think part of the prosecution's description and eliciting testimony from her about how far from the norm some of these sexual acts were, in particular the urination episode. She really testified about sexual acts that involved being urinated on by multiple men, including Diddy.
Was it just men? I couldn't quite figure that out from the testimony.
I think it was just men. That's how I interpreted it.
Certainly what his preference was, to watch men have sex with her. I couldn't tell if there were women involved in it. Not that it really matters. It certainly doesn't matter legally, but I just was curious about it.
Sure, unclear. And part of her testimony was, she said she was urinated on by 2 men at some point, one of them being Diddy. And when pressed, she said, I thought did you want this? And she said, I thought it was obvious. Her word was obvious that I wouldn't want this.
Right.
So that is sort of getting into the realm of convincing those jurors sitting there. Could anyone possibly want to be urinated on? She said at some point there was so much urine in her mouth, she began to choke.
Oh my
God. Could anyone, can the jurors believe that anyone would want this done? There are certain sexual acts.
Did y'all hear that? She had multiple men pissing on her, and one he just said that she said she had so much urine in her mouth she started to choke. This is some disgusting ugh.
And call them perversions or whatever, that are hard for people, ordinary people on that jury, to believe anyone could consent to.
And remember, the standard here is not, could it theoretically be that she wanted all these things? That is certainly one way to look at it. But you're dealing with individual jurors who bring their own personal histories to every case, and they're going to be asked, do you think that a reasonable person would consent to this? Some people are going to say, yes, I think a reasonable person could. Some people,
and maybe in New York, you might get some of those jurors. These are not prudes. This is New York City. You're going to get some people who are worldly, cosmopolitan, and have active sexual lives of their own.
As I was reading through the testimony today, I wrote down sort of 8 things that I think that the defense is going to try to get out of her on the stand tomorrow, and also certainly will argue in closing arguments. The umbrella is the whole thing was consensual, that she could have left at any time. She could have terminated the relationship at any time. Though it sometimes made her feel uncomfortable, she never outright refused to engage in the sex acts. In fact, she would sometimes assist in the selection of the sex workers. She would sometimes be the person who actually handed over money to the sex workers without Diddy's present. He would often not even be there. She would have to FaceTime in with him, or he would elect to FaceTime in to watch from afar. She never told a family or a friend or a family member that she wanted to stop. She never went to police. Is it deviant? Yes. Is it shocking? Yes. But ultimately, the defense is going to argue it was always, at the end of the day, consensual.
I think you're right. In the defense, he's got very good lawyers. They're going to be able to score these points in their cross-examination of her, and they're going to be able to sort of puncture some of the narrative. They have to be very, very careful. We've talked about this before. She's a very sympathetic witness. Pregnant people are going to engender sympathy. As a matter of fact, Mark Agnifilo told the judge before the attorney for Diddy said, look, pregnancy is a wonderful thing. It's also a way that people engender sympathy. Now, he didn't say this in front of her, but he was informing the judge that this could be prejudicial to my client, just the way she looks.
What's the judge going to do about it? Hold the trial because she happens to be pregnant?
Can't do anything about it. It is just the nature of the beast.
But all of those defenses, in some way, I think, crumble in the face of the Cassie videotape. And we've been wondering forever how the prosecution was going to use.
Yeah, that video is too. Can't get around that video. Can't get around it. But y'all listen. This is crazy. So we now know what happened on the first 6 days, 5 days of the trial. Like they had a little recap there. Next week, we're going to pick it back up. I may do daily or nightly lives on it. Yeah. DV, you can't get around that video. I may do that. I think I like this summary show where we just go through day by day. That way we catch up and everybody kind of knows now where we are in the case or where we are. So, y'all, I'm about to get some sleep because we got service in the morning. But I want y'all to know that I love y'all. I appreciate y'all for coming over and supporting the channel. Like I said, check out DV Wild channel. Click the link in the thing. Click his link and subscribe to his channel. Other than that, y'all, listen, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for coming and rocking with me at 1:31 in the morning East Coast time. I know California is about 10:31, I believe, or 9:31, whatever it is. But listen, y'all, love y'all. Y'all have a blessed night, and I will holler at y'all very soon, okay? Hit the like button on the way out, and if you want to do a super chat or donate to the channel, feel free to do that also, okay? God bless y'all. Have a great day. Thank you. Together we break chains. Thank you. All right, I love y'all. Peace out.
I'm not going nowhere. Come here. Lay your head down on my shoulder. Yeah. Promise you don't have to shed another painful tear, because I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man. And I ain't going nowhere. We gon' make it through this thing called life. I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man. And we gon' ride, we gon' ride. Still remember the day I looked into your eyes. You caught me by surprise. That walk, that talk, the way you made me gravitate towards you, it changed me for the better. You're all I need, and you're all I see, and you're fine as wine. I'm so blessed you're mine. You stole my heart right from the start. When you said hello, I saw your glow. Hey, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man. And I ain't going nowhere. We gon' make it through this thing called life. I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man. And we gon' ride, we gon' ride. Hey, if you ever been in love, put your hands up. If you tired of the lies, put your hands up. Wave them high up to the sky. If you ever been in love, put your hands up. If you tired of the lies, put your hands up. Wave them high up to the sky. I'm your man, yeah, I'm your man. And I ain't going nowhere. We gon' make it through this thing called life. I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man. And we gon' ride, we gon' ride. I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man. And I ain't going nowhere. We gon' make it through this thing called life. I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man, I'm your man. And we gon' ride, we gon' ride. Lay your head down on my shoulder. Yeah, yeah.